Shalom everybody and welcome to Torah Jewce. My name's Joshua. Thank you so much for watching. This week's Torah portion is Shalach. And this is the story that we hear so many times in reference to so many times about the spies. The spies that were sent out to check out the land, to check out Canaan, and to bring back a report of what they find. And we know that they sent out the 12 leaders, one from each of the tribes. We know they go out and they recon the area, they check it out, they see who's there, they see that Amalek is there, they see there's giants in the land, they see the well-fortified cities, and they come back with a negative report. Well, 10 of them come back with a negative report, as we know, and the 2 that come back with a positive report, Yehoshua and Caleb. Well, we know the story. They begin, the 10 come back with negative report, begin to spread this negative report throughout the people. The people begin to despair and realize that they can't do it. There's no way they can go and take the land. It's too fortified. There's giants in the land. There's no way they can do it. And, well, we know the story. They aren't allowed to go into the land. That generation must die before they can enter the land, except for Yehoshua and Caleb. You know, when I chose my Jewish name, when I converted, I put a lot of thought into who I wanted to be like and who I felt like I kind of was already, and see if there was people that I related to in the Torah. As most of you who know me, I'm not one that really goes with the flow of most things. I'm kind of independent thinker. And my time spent in church because of that, and not playing politics, people don't like the truth sometimes. They would rather have things sugar-coated and look where politics get us even today. That being said, there are times when, even being in a minority, you must stand up and say the truth and speak it. And Yehoshua and Caleb stood up before the other 10 leaders of the tribes and in front of all of the congregation and the people, and said that yes, we can go take the land. It was that simple. We can do it. They weren't afraid of Amalek. They weren't afraid of the fortified cities. They weren't afraid of the people that they saw there. But you may ask, why were the other 10 tribes? Well, quite frankly, it was a lack of emunah. It was a lack of faith that they had. And it cost them dearly. You may be asking also, well, if the leader of Ephraim, which was Yehoshua, Joshua, and Caleb, who was the leader of Judah, well, if they said that they should go, how come that those 2 tribes couldn't enter the land? Well, this is kind of the whole point of unification, the unification of Israel. They had to go in together, and they had to be unified. And it's unfortunate that those who actually stand up for what is right also pay the price of the majority. So the majority of the people said they wouldn't go. Some may even ask, why didn't Moshe make them go? Why didn't Moshe force them to go? Well, see, this is the part of, I guess you could say, the free will. They chose they weren't going to go, and Hashem basically said, okay. The question would be also, well, didn't Hashem know they weren't going to go? Well, of course he did. Of course he did. But we still have the option. We still have the opportunity to do what's right. We have the opportunity to seek the land and to enter the land and to settle the land and to do what Hashem says. Well, what does this mean to us today? How can we see this? Well, like I said, when I chose my Jewish name, which is Yehoshua Caleb ben Abraham, I took in very close consideration, not because of necessarily the meanings of the names, because Yehoshua means Hashem is Yahweh's salvation, and Caleb actually means dog. So, though I love dogs, I would not consider myself a dog, but that's what Caleb means. It was more of their actions. And he stood up against the majority and spoke with their heart, their belief and true faith in Hashem. It's not because I put myself on equal ground with Yehoshua and Caleb, and by no means. But it's a goal that I aspire to reach that type of emunah and faith, that even when you see giants in the land, and even when it seems like all the things are stacked against you in doing the will of Hashem, that because Hashem commanded it, and because He is with you, that doesn't matter if there's giants in the land. Doesn't matter if it's a well-fortified city. Doesn't matter if there's thousands and thousands and thousands of inhabitants or people that are coming against you. With Hashem, anything is possible. And if you have the emunah and the faith, and you're following the command of Hashem, which He commanded them to do anyway, it wasn't like they were taking it upon themselves to go into the land, which, as we know, after they were punished and told they couldn't go, they decided, oh no, we'll go. And Hashem said, don't go, because I'm not going to be with you. And then what happened? Well, they got their clocks cleaned and sent back running, remember? So it's not as if they were trying to do something out of the will of Hashem. Hashem told them, you go take the land. It's kind of like that in everything that we do. It's almost as if we have to be Yehoshua and Caleb in every aspect of the Torah. When Hashem tells us to keep the Sabbath, you have so many people going, oh, God understands, and, okay, well, I can only speak for me. If we're like Yehoshua and Caleb regarding the Sabbath, that if Hashem says, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, don't do these certain things on the Sabbath, that if we have the emunah that we need to keep the Sabbath, the way Hashem intends for us to keep the Sabbath, with the intent and the kavanah in our hearts to keep the Sabbath, not because it's a bunch of rules, but because Hashem said, and for the sake of heaven, to try and get to that spiritual point, then do we not think that Hashem is going to bless it, and He is going to defeat the things that are in our way and clear the path and the obstacles, whether that be a job or whatever it may be? What about in the festivals? What about eating kosher? What about daily prayers? What about wearing tzitzit? What about, all of the different things? What about living in Israel? What about settling the land today? What about building the temple? Where is the Yehoshua and Caleb now? And some may say, well, God, the reason it's not happening is because God's hand is keeping people back. Is that really why? And maybe it is. By no means am I God, and no means do I have the red God phone that I can call up to heaven and go, hey Hashem, what's going on? And I don't mean any disrespect, God forbid. But what I'm saying is, it takes action. And Hashem has decreed that we build the temple. He has decreed that we settle the land. Why do you think maybe we're having problems? Israel's having problems today. And I'm not being judgmental. Believe me, I'm just looking at the history of when we don't obey and do what Hashem says. Hey, and I'm just as guilty. Here I'm sitting in the United States, a Jew. Where should I be? I should be in the land, right? Why am I not there? Because of my own fears, my own, I don't know, my own resignations of, and my own talking myself into saying, well, maybe Hashem wants me to be here. And maybe he does. But maybe he wants me to settle the land. But you could say, well, if you go in the land, maybe you'll get driven out. That's true. That may be true too. So how do we know? Well, we have to pray, and we have to read Torah, and we have to study, and we have to unify ourselves so we're not disjointed and we're not split up, and we come together. See, Joshua and Caleb, they actually got to enter the land, but not after, but after 40 years. They still had to wander around with everybody else till that generation had passed. That's a huge price to pay. Huge price to pay. But they got to enter the land. But even Moshe didn't get to enter the land. And look how wonderful and great he was. And he didn't get to enter the land. And there's a lot of, the sages say there's a lot of reasons why he didn't get to enter the land. Sure, he struck the rock and didn't speak to the rock, and because he was on such a high level, then, you know, when people of great responsibility and high spiritual level sin, it's a greater punishment. But then there are some who said if he would have entered the land, then he would have built the temple and Hashem wouldn't have been able to destroy it. I don't know. I mean, those are great stories in the Midrashim, and they're just really, they're interesting and gives us great thought. But what about today in our daily lives? Each of us have the entering the land type of thing, whether it be in our observance. Seems like every time that we want to begin to increase our observance of Torah, something always gets in our way. And it's easy for us to rationalize why we can't do it right now, whatever it may be. Whether it's keep the Sabbath for whatever reason, something always comes up, there's something always important, more important than keeping the Sabbath? Probably not. Okay? But we rationalize these things in our mind, and it's time for us to take the stand like Yehoshua and Caleb and say, you know what? Hashem makes time in the 6 days of the week to take care of all of our business. He asks for 1 day of rest. We can't give him 1 day? Really? We can't give him 1 day out of the 7 that we have? And he's commanded it. What about our diets? What about our Torah study? What about the festivals? What about the commandments that he gives us? Family purity laws, all these different things. Why can't we be Yehoshua and Caleb in these matters? Why can't we be like them? What's keeping us? What giants can't we defeat with the help of Hashem? Has he not already told us that he would fight for us? Has he not already told us that we should do these things? What about the Temple Mount? What about building the temple? What about the sacrifices? What about these things? What about Jerusalem? What about the land? Why are we letting these people who aren't even a people dictate to anybody? Why can't Netanyahu be like Joshua and Caleb and say, forget it. Forget it. This is our land. We're going to settle it. That's it. If you'd like to stay, here are the rules that you can stay. Other than that, if you don't like it, you can leave. It's that simple. You have all these other countries around that you're more than welcome to go to. Okay? See, Jews don't get that type of consideration. All the Jews got kicked out of the Arab countries. So that's the way, and they're Arabs in the government of Israel. No one seems to remember that fact. Well, there are some who remember that, but very few. And they have a say. But here we go. So, to be like Yehoshua and Caleb. I'm not saying that we have the same fortitude as them in the same spiritual heights, because remember, Yehoshua was the apprentice of Moshe. Caleb was the husband of Miriam. They were men of great spiritual stature. But at least it's something that we can try to attain. that same type of emunah, that same type of courage that we need today. We've been enslaved by Pharaoh. I spoke of this last time. We've been enslaved by Pharaoh, and we've allowed it. And now it's time for us to come out of Egypt and to enter the land. Whatever that means for you, whether that means more observance, stop making excuses. Stop letting the things of your life get in the way of what Hashem's trying to do for you. Because anytime, and it happens to me, it happens to everybody who tries. Everybody who tries, something comes up to try and distract you. The Yetzer Hara does not want you to succeed. And the only way you can do that, to beat him, is to cry out to Hashem and ask for help. That is the only way. You can't do it on your own. And some of you just throw your hands up and you say, it's too hard. It's too hard. You know, it's easier to go with the flow. You know, my friends and my family don't understand what I'm doing. It's easier just to go with them. Well, guess what? You're going to wander around for 40 years. Don't waste the time. You know what the truth is. You're responsible for knowing. Yeah, this is kind of harsh right now, because you know what? We live in times where we don't have the luxury to just, oh, well, I'll do it next week or I'll do it tomorrow. We need to get serious and do it now. We need the spirit of Yehoshua and Caleb. We need that courage and that emunah in order to settle the land and do what Hashem says. And He will fight for us. He will go forth for us. And He will help defeat the Yetzer and bring us closer to Him in many, many ways. So let's do that. Let's really look at this portion. And let's try and ask Hashem to please grant us that same type of courage and emunah that Yehoshua and Caleb had, so that we may have that same type of fortitude, that same type of strength, same type of emunah, same type of courage to enter the land and do what we're supposed to do. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been informative, and also that it will encourage you to take the land as Hashem has commanded us to do. Shalom, shalom.